My daughter, tell everyone. Guys, I don't even know where to begin. I never thought I'd record a video like this. Never. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not one to show off. I'm not one to expose my life on the internet. But today I woke up and felt that if I didn't do this today, I'd never have the courage again. My father passed away 4 months ago. 4 months. And I still can't say this without feeling a tightness in my chest that feels like it will never go away. For those who have lost someone, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a pain that goes away. It's a pain you learn to carry. My father was how do I describe him to you? He was the kind of man you don't see anymore. Simple, very simple. He didn't have social media. He didn't understand anything about technology, but he lived on YouTube every day, watching videos of testimonies, prophecies, sermons. He commented on everything. Every video he watched, he left a comment. Sometimes long, sometimes just an amen, but he always commented. It was like his way of participating in the church when he couldn't leave the house. In the city where he lived, everyone knew Seu Antonio. Everyone. Not because he was famous, but because he was the kind of person that people would stop to greet when he walked down the street. The kind of person who would bring the whole neighborhood to his aid when he was sick. The kind of person who would listen when he spoke because they knew he wasn't talking for nothing. And he had dreams. Ever since I was little, I remember my father waking up in the middle of the night and sitting in the kitchen in the dark, with his notebook writing. I would ask him what it was, and he would say, "Daughter, God showed me something. I need to write it down before I forget." I grew up thinking that was normal, that every father did that. I didn't. When he passed away 4 months ago, as I said, I went to his house to help my mother organize things. And that's when what I'm going to tell you today happened. I was tidying up his room, folding clothes, organizing books, those kinds of things you do when you lose someone and need to keep your hands busy because your mind can't stay still. And under the bed, on his side, there was a box, an old shoebox, one of those antique ones with tape around it and his name written in black pen on the lid. I stared at that box for a while. I don't know how long. It could have been a minute. It could have been 10. And when I opened it, oh my God, I wasn't prepared. There were no shoes. There was no photo. There was paper. Handwritten notebook paper. Lots of paper. My father's handwriting, the handwriting I learned to read even before I learned to read in school. Steady on the first pages, shaky on the last. And on top of everything, separate from the other papers, was an envelope, sealed with tape, yellowed with age, and handwritten on the front. For my daughter, keep it until after I'm gone. I had to sit on the floor. It wasn't a decision. My legs simply couldn't support me anymore. I held that envelope in my hand for a long time, unable to open it, unable to put it down. My mother was in the kitchen and I didn't call her. I don't know why. It seemed like it was just for me, that he had left it just for me. When I finally opened it and started reading, I had to stop several times because the tears were clouding my vision. It wasn't from longing, at least not only from longing, it was from something I can't name. A weight, a responsibility. Because my father didn't write a farewell letter. He wrote a warning. And I kept it to myself for 4 months because I didn't have the courage. 4 months rereading those pages, crying, asking God to show me if I should speak or stay silent. And this morning I woke up with a certainty that I can't ignore. He spent his time watching testimony videos on YouTube. He was always commenting, always sharing. That was his way of serving God in recent years. And I truly believe that if he were here, he would have recorded this video himself. Since he's not here, it's up to me. So I grabbed my phone, sat down here, and finally decided to tell you what was written on those pages. God forgive me if I am wrong to speak. And God forgive me if I remain silent when I should speak. Before I tell you what was written on those pages, I need you to understand who my father was. Because if I just come here and say, my father left a letter with prophecies, you'll think I'm just another person, desperate for attention on the internet. And I understand that. I'd probably think that way myself if it was someone else saying it. But my father wasn't like that. He was 71 years old when he passed away. He spent his entire life working, raising a family, serving in the church without ever seeking the spotlight. He wasn't a pastor. He wasn't a deacon. He didn't hold any official position. He was just a man who loved God in a way I've rarely seen in other people. That quiet way, that way that doesn't need a stage. In recent years, when his health no longer allowed him to leave the house much, he began to live on YouTube. And when I say live, I'm not exaggerating. He watched hours and hours of videos a day. Testimonies, prophecies, sermons, Bible studies. Anything that had to do with God, he watched. And he commented on everything, every single video. Sometimes I would call him at night and he would say, "Daughter, you need to see this video I found today. This man said something that kept me awake all night." He took it very seriously. For him, it wasn't entertainment. It was like an extension of his church, the place where he nourished himself spiritually when his body could no longer endure going there. And the dreams. Oh my father's dreams. Since I was little, I remember him waking up in the middle of the night. It wasn't insomnia. It was different. He would wake up with a strange calmness, grab the notebook that was always on his bedside table, and write. Sometimes I would hear him getting up and I would get curious, so I would go to the hallway to peek. He would sit in the kitchen with a small light on, writing in silence. Once, when I was about 12 years old, I asked him what that was. He looked at me and said it in a way I'll never forget. "God sometimes speaks when the world is silent, daughter. At night there's no noise at all, so he takes advantage of that." I grew up thinking that was normal behavior for a devoted father. I only understood the weight of it much later. He had dreams that came true. I won't go into detail about all of them now because otherwise the video will never end, but I'll give you an example. In 2019, months before the pandemic, he called me, upset. He said he had dreamed of the world being at a standstill, with empty streets, closed churches, people afraid to touch each other. I listened, said amen to him not to worry, and didn't think much of it. A few months later, the whole world was exactly as he had described. He never said, "I told you so." Never. He just became quieter, more serious, more withdrawn. And it was after that he started writing more, much more. When I opened that box and saw the number of papers inside, I understood that this wasn't something he'd just written today. It was years of notes, years of dreams, visions, things he heard in the early hours of the morning and needed to record before the day came and took them away. But the letter was unlike anything else. It wasn't with the other sheets. It was separate, on top, in that envelope with my name on it, as if he knew I was going to be the first to open that box. As if he had arranged everything thinking about that moment. I read the letter for the first time while still sitting on the floor of his room. I read it once, twice, 3 times. Each time I finished, I went back to the beginning because I couldn't believe what was written. And you know what really broke me? A data. At the top of the letter, even before beginning the text, he wrote the date he was writing it. And below, separately, he wrote another date. The date he called the moment when everything begins to change. End of May 2026. Guys, he wrote this 8 months ago. 8 months ago, sitting in his house, not knowing he wouldn't be here to see it. And here I am today, in May 2026, with this letter in my hand and with my heart in my throat, because ever since I first read those pages, I've been looking at the world with different eyes. And what I'm seeing scares me. Not because I'm easily scared, I'm a woman of faith. I believe God is in control. But there's a difference between having faith and closing your eyes to what's happening. And my father wrote very clearly that closing your eyes now is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. He began the letter like this, and I'm going to read it exactly as he wrote it because I don't want to change a single word of what he left. My daughter, if you are reading this, it's because I'm already gone. Don't cry now. Cry later. First, read everything to the end. Then cry as much as you need to. But first, read. Because what I'm going to tell you isn't meant to be kept to yourself. It's meant to be said. And if I'm no longer here to say it, then you'll have to say it for me. I had to stop here the first time I read it. I couldn't continue for a while. Because it was exactly his voice. Exactly the way he spoke. Direct, without beating around the bush, with that quiet authority that only comes from someone who has lived a lot and is at peace with what they have experienced. When I was finally able to continue, what I read next changed the way I see everything. Okay, enough stalling. I know I'm stalling. It's just that every time I get to this part, I freeze. But I'll read it. I'll read it because that's what he asked. My father began the letter like this. My daughter, God showed me the same thing 3 times in a dream. When God repeats something, it's because it's serious. The first time I thought it was a nightmare. The second time I woke up praying. The third time I got up, turned on the light, and sat there until sunrise. Because I knew. It wasn't a dream. It was a warning. He continues, what I saw wasn't immediate destruction. It wasn't bombs. It wasn't war in the way we imagine. It was something quieter and therefore more dangerous, like the world functioning normally on the outside and rotting on the inside. People waking up, working, laughing, making plans. And at the same time, an absence growing, like when the light dims before going out. You barely notice, until suddenly you're in the dark and you don't know when it happened. Guys, aren't you feeling this? This feeling that something is wrong but you can't quite put your finger on it. I've been talking to friends, to people from church, and everyone says the same thing. Everyone is carrying a weight they can't name. I go into the comments section of the religious videos my father used to watch because I wanted to understand what he was going through inside, and what I read breaks my heart. There's a woman who wrote this. I can no longer feel joy in anything, not even in church. I sit there, and it's as if God has left and no one has noticed. There's a man who wrote, I wake up every day with a fear that has no name. It's not a fear of anything specific. It's a fear of the air. There's a mother who wrote, my 22-year-old daughter told me last week that she sees no meaning in anything. She has everything. And yet she's empty. My father described it exactly 8 months ago. He called it the first sign. The first sign won't come from heaven. It will come from the people. When you look around and see that people are angry for no reason, anxious for no cause, with an emptiness that no distraction fills, know that the Holy Spirit is withdrawing. Not all at once, little by little. Like the tide receding before a tsunami, those who know the sea can read the receding tide. Those who don't know think it's just a normal day. That's the first sign. And I need to say that when I first read this, I went to research it. Because that's how I am. I need to verify things. And the numbers I found left me speechless. Never in the history of humanity has there been so much anxiety, so much depression, so much existential emptiness as there is today. An entire generation that has access to everything and finds no reason to live. This is not my opinion. These are facts. These are studies. This is the world today. My father wrote this 8 months ago, sitting in the kitchen in the middle of the night. But the second sign, guys, the second sign is what kept me up at night for weeks. He wrote it like this. The second sign will be a war that the world will try to call a conflict. It will start in the Middle East. It has already started. But what I saw in the dream is that it won't stay there. I saw nations being dragged along. I saw the largest army in the West being pulled into something with no easy way out. I saw leaders making decisions in closed meetings that the people will never know about. And I saw the moment when 2 powers that should only be adversaries became irreversible enemies. I read that and went straight to the news. Folks, right now, as I record this video, the tension between the United States and Iran is at a level that experts are calling the highest in decades. I'm not making this up. It's in the newspapers. It's in the international news. Attacks, retaliations, troop movements, aircraft carriers deployed. And in the comments on the religious videos my father used to watch, people are desperate. There are comments like this. My son is in the army. I can't sleep. There are comments like this. This is going to turn into World War III. I feel it. There are pastors writing, the Euphrates is drying up. Read Revelation 16. My father wrote about this 8 months ago, and he didn't stop there, because, along with the war, he wrote something that made me grip the paper with both hands. I was trembling so much. He wrote, Daughter, in the videos I was watching, people were starting to talk about a man. Not the man on stage, the man behind the scenes. The one no one elected but who is everywhere, decisions are made. I'm not going to write his name because names don't matter. What matters is what the Bible says about this type of figure. Someone who operates in the shadows of power, who makes deals that people don't see, who appears at the right moments in history, as if he were always waiting. I saw people in the comments quoting verses from Revelation and comparing them. I don't know if it's him. Only God knows. But I know the Bible warned that this type of figure would appear, and that when he appeared, most wouldn't recognize him because they wouldn't be waiting for the right place. I had to stop reading here, because folks, I went into the comments section of religious videos after reading this, and what I saw was exactly what my father described. People from various countries, without knowing each other, without planning it, all arriving at the same figure, asking the same questions, quoting the same verses. One woman wrote, "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just saying that when I read Daniel and Revelation and then read the news, something clicks." A man wrote, "Pay attention to who is behind the scenes of the Middle East agreements. The Bible is very clear about where it will come from." My father didn't point fingers at anyone. I won't point fingers at anyone either. But he wrote that those with open spiritual eyes will see without needing anyone to tell them. And then there's the third sign. The third sign is what he called the sign that nobody will want to believe until it's too late. And it is directly linked to the end of May 2026. But before I continue, I need to breathe. And I need you to do something right now. If someone you love is feeling empty, anxious, afraid, without knowing why, send this video to that person now. Not tomorrow. Now. Because my father wrote that the greatest danger of recent times is not the war out there. It's the war within people who don't know they're at war. Write in the comments the name of someone you want God to protect during this time that is coming. Just the name. I will pray for each one. The third sign was the one my father left last in the letter, and I understand why. Because if he had written it at the beginning, anyone would have folded the paper, put it back in the envelope, and said the old man had lost his mind. If someone had told me that on the street, I myself would have smiled politely and walked away. But I read the first two signs. I saw with my own eyes that they were happening, and when I got to the third, I couldn't doubt anymore. He wrote it like this: "Daughter, the third sign will not be in heaven or on earth. It will be inside the church. And that's why it will be the hardest to recognize. Because when evil enters through the front door, nobody opens it. But when it enters dressed as an anointed one, a prophet, a man of God, people open the door and even give thanks." He continued, "I spent years watching videos on YouTube, years reading comments, and I saw something happening so slowly that almost no one noticed. I saw the message of the cross being replaced by a message of prosperity. I saw repentance being called trauma. I saw sin being called a personal journey. I saw churches full of people who had never read the Bible but knew the name of every famous religious leader. And God showed me that this was not an accident. It was preparation. When you empty a house of everything solid and fill it with beautiful decorations, any wind will knock it down. That's what they did to the faith of many people. I needed to stop here and cry, because I recognized it. I recognized it in my own life. How many times have I heard preaching that made me feel good but didn't challenge me in any way? How many times have I left a service feeling energized but without any conviction to change anything? How many times have I confused emotion with the presence of God? My father saw this happening in the comments of the videos he watched. People who came looking for God and left with self-help techniques and a verse pasted on. And he wrote that this emptying of true faith was the third sign. The sign that prepares the ground for everything that comes after. Because an empty faith cannot endure. And what comes next will require a faith that isn't just for show. He wrote, "When the three signs are visible at the same time, the emptiness in people, the escalating war in the Middle East, and the church full but hollow inside, know that we are at the entrance. Not at the end, at the entrance. What comes after the entrance is what the Bible calls tribulation. And tribulation is not a metaphor. It is literal. It is the world being shaken until what is false falls, and what is true stands." And then he wrote the part that made me sit on the floor of his room and not be able to get up for a while. "Daughter, I put a date on this letter not because I know the day or the hour. Nobody knows. But God showed me a window a period, and this period begins at the end of May 2026. Not like an explosion, like a door opening silently. Most won't realize the door has opened. Only those who are attentive will feel that the air has changed. End of May 2026. Guys, he wrote this 8 months ago, without knowing he wouldn't be here to see it, without knowing it would be his daughter here in a YouTube video reading these words aloud. And here I am, in May 2026, with this letter in my hand, and the air has changed. Can't you feel that the air has changed? The war between the United States and Iran that I mentioned before is not stagnant. It is escalating. Every passing week brings something new that analysts call worrying, but that those who read the apocalypse call familiar. Geopolitical experts are using words they haven't used in decades. World War III has ceased to be a conspiracy theory and has become a topic of debate in universities, parliaments, and closed government meetings. And in the comments on religious videos, which were my father's world, people are panicking. One woman wrote this week, "I feel like we're in the final chapter and nobody is taking it seriously." A man wrote, "I read the news in the morning, and then I opened the apocalypse, and I can't tell which is which anymore." A mother wrote, "I have 3 young children, and I keep looking at them and praying to God that what's coming doesn't reach them. These people don't know each other. They're in different countries. They speak different languages, and they're feeling the same thing." My father felt this 8 months ago, and he wrote about it. But the letter doesn't end with the 3 signs. Because after describing all of that, after setting the date, after preparing myself for what's to come, my father wrote something I wasn't expecting. Something that completely changed the tone of everything. That made me understand why he spent his whole life waking up in the middle of the night to write. It wasn't out of fear. It was for love. And what he wrote on the last pages is what I'm going to tell you in the next chapter. Because this part, folks, this part is for those watching this video who feel they're in the right place. For those who have made it this far and feel it wasn't by chance. I need to be honest with you. When I first read the 3 signs, I was angry. Not at God, not at my father. I was angry at myself. Because I realized that I had spent years in church, years calling myself a Christian, and at some point along the way, I had traded true faith for a comfortable version of it. A version that demands nothing, that doesn't bother anyone, that fits into the week's schedule without disrupting any plans. And my father knew that. I don't know if he knew specifically about me, but he knew about the world. He knew what was happening to the faith of an entire generation. And in the last pages of the letter, he no longer wrote about signs. He no longer wrote about dates. He wrote about what to do now. And it began like this. "Daughter, everything I've written to you so far isn't meant to scare you. Fear paralyzes, and those who remain paralyzed when the storm arrives go nowhere. I wrote to wake you up." There's a difference between fear and awakening. Fear looks at the danger and freezes. Awakening looks at the danger and moves. I read that and stayed quiet for a while, because it's true. I know a lot of people who hear about the end times and what happens is paralysis, anxiety, a despair that leads nowhere. They keep consuming content about the end of the world, about tribulation, about signs, and each video they watch makes them heavier, more frightened, more hopeless. That's not what my father wanted. He continued, "The question you need to ask isn't when it will happen. The question is who you will be when it happens. Because tribulation doesn't create character. It reveals the character that was already there. The fire doesn't decide what will burn and what will remain standing. That decision was made before the fire arrived. It's made now, in the silence of your home, in the way you treat people who can't give you anything in return, in the honesty you have when no one is watching. That's where it's decided who you will be when the world shakes. People. I had to stop here and reread it 3 times. Because I went into the comments on my dad's videos, on those channels he followed, and what I saw most was people asking what to buy, where to hide, how to prepare physically, stockpiled food, bunker, generator. And I'm not saying that being physically prepared is wrong, it's not. But my dad wrote that the best preparation there is doesn't fit on any supermarket shelf. He wrote, "In my dreams, I saw people who had everything prepared on the outside but nothing prepared on the inside. A full house, an empty soul. And I saw people who had nothing materially but possessed a peace that made no sense to anyone on the outside. A peace that the Bible describes and that I only understood when I was old enough to stop trusting in my own strength. This peace cannot be bought. It cannot be stored. It comes from only one place." He didn't need to write where he came from. I knew. Anyone who's ever felt it knows. It is the peace that surpasses all understanding. The one Paul describes in Philippians. The one that doesn't depend on external circumstances because it doesn't dwell outside. It dwells within. And then my father wrote something that caught me completely off guard. Because after everything, after the signs, after the warnings, after the date, he turned the page and wrote about my mother, about me, about his grandchildren whom he wouldn't see grow up, and the handwriting that had started firm and become shaky throughout the pages. In this part was almost illegible, not from weakness, from emotion. He wrote, "Daughter, I've spent my life waking up in the middle of the night to write down what God showed me. Your mother complained that I left the light on and she couldn't sleep. I apologized and kept writing, not because I was disobedient, but because some things can't wait until morning. When God speaks in the middle of the night, it's because in the morning the noise of the day covers everything and we forget. I couldn't forget. Not this time. I was crying when I got here. I still can't read this part without crying to this day." He continued, "I don't know if I'll be here when you read this. If I'm not, don't be angry with God. He didn't take me away too soon. He gave me enough time to write what needed to be written. And if you're reading this, it's because it was meant to be you, not someone else. You. So, do what I couldn't do. Go ahead, tell your story. Don't keep it to yourself." 4 months. I kept it stored away for 4 months. 4 months rereading, crying, asking God to show me if I should speak. And today I understand that every day I remained silent was a day that someone who needed to hear it didn't. I'm not going to stay silent anymore. But there's one last part to the letter. The part he saved for last. And it's the shortest part of all. Just one paragraph. With small, cramped handwriting, as if he were trying to cram as much as possible into the smallest space. As if he knew that time was running out while he was writing. And what is written in that final paragraph is what I'm going to tell you now. I was unable to read that last paragraph aloud for a while. I tried to rehearse before recording. I sat here alone with the paper in my hand, trying to read without breaking it. I couldn't, so I gave up trying to be strong and decided to read it however it came out, with whatever voice came out, with whatever emotion came, because my father didn't write this to be read in a steady voice. He wrote it trembling, and I'll read it trembling too. He wrote it like this: "Daughter, the last thing God showed me wasn't destruction. It was harvest. I saw people on their knees in simple places, small houses, empty rooms, and above them a light that didn't come from any window. I saw families gathered without cell phones in their hands, without televisions on, without any hurry to go anywhere, just together. And that was enough. I saw old and young praying side by side without shame. I saw people who had lost everything materially, but who had in their eyes something I don't know how to name in Portuguese. In Greek, the Bible calls it Irene, peace, not the peace the world gives, the other kind." He paused in the letter. You can tell because the next line begins differently, with slower handwriting, as if he had lifted his pen for a moment before continuing. And then he wrote the last thing. "I'm not afraid of what's to come. I never have been. What has given me trouble my whole life is what was already here. The petty malice of everyday life, the indifference, the heart that hardens little by little without the person realizing it. That's what scared me. The end times don't scare me because God has already shown me the end of the end. And the end of the end is too beautiful to fit on this page. So remember this, it's not about surviving what's to come. It's about arriving on the other side, being who you should have been all along. Take care of your soul, daughter. God will take care of the rest." He finished. That was it. That was the last line of the letter. Take care of your soul. God will take care of the rest. I held that paper in my hand for a long time after reading it for the first time, and I kept thinking about how many times in my life I've worried about everything else and forgotten about my soul, how many hours I've invested in things that won't last, and how many times I've postponed the only investment that truly matters. And I thought of my father, that simple man who woke up in the early hours of the morning, who commented on YouTube videos, who was known in the city not for his wealth or position, but for being someone people trusted. He didn't build anything that appears in any ranking, but she built a soul that when the time came was ready, and he left enough written down so that whoever stayed behind would know what to do. I look at the world today and see the 3 signs he described. I see emptiness in people. I see war escalating. I see the church emptying out from within. And instead of feeling the despair I felt when I first read this, I feel a strange thing that I can only call a peaceful urgency, as if at the same time I know that time is short, and I know that there is enough time for those who decide now. End of May 2026. Not like an explosion, like a door opening. And open doors are invitations. You can look at an open door and run away from it in fear, or you can look and understand that it was opened for you to pass through, that on the other side there is something that this side can no longer offer. My father chose to walk through that door properly, with his soul at peace, with his accounts settled, with his children informed. And today I understand that this video isn't mine. I'm just the voice. The message is his, and God's, who woke him up in the middle of the night for years until he had written everything that needed to be written. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. It's never by chance. You are here because something in you recognizes what is being said. Because the same voice that used to wake my father in the middle of the night speaks to you too. Perhaps more quietly. Perhaps you have learned to ignore it. But it hasn't stopped. She never stops. And what she's saying now, at the end of May 2026, is the same thing she's always said. The same thing we always think we can put off until later. Don't put it off until later. Take care of your soul. God will take care of the rest. I wasn't planning on recording this video today. I woke up in the morning, made coffee, sat at the table, and the letter was there beside me, as it always is. It's been 4 months since I've been able to put it back in the box. It's always nearby, as if I knew I still hadn't done what needed to be done with it. I did it today, and now that I've finished speaking, I'm feeling something I haven't felt since my father's funeral. A mixture of pain and relief that doesn't have a proper name. Pain because talking about him is remembering that he's not here. Relief because I know he's somewhere, knowing that I finally did what he asked. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a prophetess. I don't have a big channel or followers or anything like that. I'm a daughter who lost her father and found a letter under his bed, and the letter said to speak. So I spoke. Now I want to ask something, not for myself. For my father, who spent the last years of his life on YouTube, believing that every comment he left on every video could reach the right person at the right time. If this video reached you today, if you watched this far, if something that was said touched something inside you that you can't name but recognize, then this video was made for you. And you know what to do with that. I'm not asking you to panic. I'm not asking you to stockpile food or seek shelter. My father was very clear. The best preparation doesn't fit on any shelf. I'm asking you to stop. Just stop. For a moment. In the midst of everything that's happening in your life, in the midst of the noise of the world, the news, social media, obligations, stop. And ask yourself honestly, how is my soul? Not how my work is going, not how my relationship is going, not how my health is going, how my soul is doing. That part of you that doesn't appear in any photos, doesn't have followers, and doesn't need to please anyone. That part that will exist long after everything here is over. How is she? If the answer comes with discomfort, with that feeling that you know there's something that needs to be resolved, but you've been putting it off, then you already know what to do. You don't need me to tell you. You already know. And if you are here today carrying a burden that is not yours, a pain that won't go away, a feeling that the world is too heavy for you to carry alone, I want to pray for you now. I'm not going to ask you to write anything. I just want you to read along with me if you want to. And if you don't want to read, just be quiet and receive. Lord, each person who has arrived here today carries something. You know what it is. You know them by name. You know how many sleepless nights they've had, how many tears they've hidden, how many times they've tried to solve alone what only you can solve. Today, I ask that you do what only you know how to do. Speak to them in silence. Get close in the way only you can. And may the end of May 2026 not be a moment of terror for those who are here. May it be the moment when each one decides which side they want to be on when the door opens. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to end this video the same way my father ended every comment he left on the videos he watched. He always wrote the same thing at the end. Every comment. Every time. As if it were a signature. As if it were a reminder to himself as much as to whoever read it. He wrote, God has not abandoned the world has forgotten God, but he is still here. He continues to call, he continues to wait, and as long as there is time, there is choice. Dad, this video is for you. I was just the voice.